remember sitting on the edge of my bed that night, my wrinkled hands trembling as I tried to hold the teacup steady. The hot liquid sloshed against the rim, spilling onto my nightgown, but I didn't even flinch. My mind was too busy replaying the words my daughter-in-law had just screamed at me in front of the entire family. "You're nothing but dead weight in this house. Maybe it's time you moved into a nursing home where you belong." Her words were sharp, cutting through me deeper than any knife could. The room had fallen silent after she said it, and my son, my only son, the boy I raised with my bare hands, stood there with his arms folded, his eyes on the floor, saying nothing. Nothing. The silence from him was worse than the insult from her. I felt abandoned in that moment, like an old tree stripped of its last leaves. And as I sat in that silence, with tears burning in my eyes, something inside me whispered a truth I didn't want to hear. This is karma. This is exactly what you did to your own mother-in-law. The realization hit me like a hammer. Years ago, I had been the one pulling the strings, manipulating, whispering poison into my husband's ears, convincing him his mother was a burden. I had rolled my eyes at her, mocked her little ways, and slowly, deliberately, turned her own son against her. I thought I was winning back then. I thought I was protecting my marriage. But now, decades later, my own daughter-in-law was doing the same to me. And my son, just like my husband back then, was letting it happen. I don't know what hurt worse, the disrespect or the memory of how cruel I once was. Let me back up a little. My name is Margaret Hayes, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 84 years old now. Once upon a time, I was a proud blonde wife with a perfect smile, living in a small town in Pennsylvania. I raised my son, Daniel, with everything I had, pouring my soul into making him successful. But before Daniel, before the life I live now, there was my late husband, and his mother, my mother-in-law, Helen. Helen. Even saying her name now fills me with shame. She was a frail woman, soft-spoken and gentle. She had these icy blue eyes that always seemed to see right through me. And maybe that's why I hated her so much, because she saw who I really was. She would come over, always giving Daniel advice, always telling my husband how to run things. I felt overshadowed. So I did what so many young wives did back then. I fought for power in my home, and I didn't care who I destroyed in the process. I'd whisper to my husband that his mother was meddling, that she didn't trust him to live his own life. I told him she thought he was weak. Slowly, I planted seeds of doubt until he started pulling away from her. I'll never forget the night Helen stood in the kitchen, tears running down her cheeks, asking my husband, "Why are you letting her drive us apart?" And my husband, cold and hard, replied, "Because you're always interfering, mother." That was the moment I knew I had won. Or so I thought. But life has a cruel way of circling back. Now, decades later, here I am, an old woman watching the same game play out, only this time I'm the one being cast aside. My daughter-in-law, Jessica, is young, sharp-tongued, and beautiful in the way only youth can be. She married Daniel 5 years ago, and I'll admit at first I was thrilled. She seemed so sweet, so eager to be part of the family. But it didn't take long before I started noticing the little things. The way she would sigh when I asked a question, the way she rolled her eyes when I repeated myself, the way she nudged Daniel away when I reached for him. Started small. That's how it always begins. But tonight was the breaking point. We were sitting at the dinner table. I had made an effort, even though my arthritis makes it hard to stand for long. I baked a pie just like I used to when Daniel was a little boy. I wanted to bring some warmth back into the house. I wanted to feel needed again. But when I placed the pie on the table, Jessica laughed. "God, Daniel, do we really need this? It's full of sugar. You know I'm watching my figure. Why does she insist on cooking this old-fashioned junk?" The words stung, but I forced a smile. I just thought maybe Daniel would like it. He always did when he was little. Jessica smirked. "Well, he's not little anymore. He has me now." The room went cold. My hands shook as I tried to slice the pie. That's when she delivered the final blow, the one that still echoes in my ears. "You're nothing but dead weight in this house. Maybe it's time you moved into a nursing home where you belong." And Daniel, my Daniel, sat there in silence. I looked at him, searching his face, begging for some sign of love, of loyalty. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared down at his plate, as if he couldn't bear to watch. That's when I realized I was reliving the very scene I had orchestrated years ago. Only now I was in Helen's shoes. And God, it hurt. I excused myself, my voice shaking, and went to my room. That's where I am now, sitting on the bed with my tea gone cold, staring at the walls that suddenly feel like prison bars. And for the first time in years, I whispered a prayer. Not for strength, not for revenge, but for forgiveness. Because deep down I know I deserve this. But as much as I feel punished, as much as I feel karma has finally come to collect its debt, a part of me wonders, is this just the beginning of something worse? Because earlier today before dinner, I overheard Jessica whispering on the phone. Her voice was low, urgent, secretive. And though I couldn't hear everything, one sentence cut through clear as day. She won't be here much longer. Don't worry. My heart stopped when I heard it. Was she talking about me? And if she was, what exactly did she mean? When I finally managed to fall asleep that night, my dreams were not kind to me. They carried me back in time, dragging me into memories I had buried so deep that I thought they'd never return. But now they came rushing back, bright, painful, and merciless. I saw myself as a young wife, just 22, with long blonde hair tied up neatly, wearing the pretty dresses I always bought on sale but made look expensive. My husband, Charles, had just come home from work, and his mother, my dreaded mother-in-law, Helen, was already in the kitchen, fussing over the roast like it was her house, not mine. Back then I hated it. Hated the way she came in uninvited. Hated how Charles seemed to melt into a boy every time she spoke. He'd nod along, listening to her every word like gospel, while I stood in the background, invisible. And so, I decided I would not be invisible anymore. I started planting little comments here and there. Charles, don't you think your mom is too controlling? Doesn't it feel like she doesn't trust you to handle things yourself? He would frown, shrug, then wave it off. But I could see the seed was planted. Later, when Helen suggested he save money instead of buying me the dress I wanted, I whispered, "See, she doesn't want you to be happy. She doesn't care about me, only about controlling you." It was a slow game, a manipulative dance I told myself was necessary. I convinced myself I was protecting our marriage, but deep down I wanted to win. And eventually I did. I still remember the day Charles snapped. We were having Sunday dinner, the four of us. Helen had suggested Daniel, just a baby back then, shouldn't be allowed sweets so young. Charles, already frustrated, slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "Mother, enough! You've interfered in everything. I'm sick of it. This is our family now, not yours." Helen's face crumbled. She sat there, staring at the son she had raised, the boy she had poured her life into, as he turned against her. Tears filled her eyes. And me. I sat there in silence, pretending to be shocked, but inside I was smiling. Smiling because I thought I had won. But now, more than 60 years later, I know the truth. There was no victory that day. Only loss. Because not long after, Helen grew sick. Cancer. I didn't treat her with kindness. I didn't comfort her. I made excuses not to visit, telling Charles we had a baby to care for. And when she passed away, I cried. Not out of love, but out of fear that Charles might see through me. That was the kind of woman I was. And now, sitting in my room in 2025, hearing my daughter-in-law Jessica whisper, "She won't be here much longer," I realized just how much the past was repeating itself. But Jessica is nothing like me. She's colder, sharper, and more dangerous. The next morning, I made my way to the kitchen. My knees ached as I shuffled across the wooden floor, gripping the wall for balance. Jessica was there, sipping coffee from her favorite white mug. She didn't even glance at me. I tried to speak, my voice soft. "Good morning, Jessica." She looked up, her lips curling into a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morning." Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "You should be careful walking around so early. You never know when accidents happen." Accidents? The word lingered in the air like smoke. Froze, my heart racing. Did she mean it as a simple comment, or was it a threat? I wanted to ask, but I didn't dare. Instead, I sat quietly, watching her as she scrolled through her phone. She looked so casual, so calm, like she hadn't just hinted at something sinister. I thought of Helen again. How she had probably felt when I turned her son against her. The helplessness, the loneliness. And now I was drowning in the same waters. Later that afternoon, Daniel came home early. I thought maybe, just maybe, he would finally talk to me about what happened the night before. But instead, Jessica rushed to greet him at the door, wrapping her arms around him. "Daniel, honey, I've been thinking," she said sweetly. "Wouldn't it be better if your mom moved into a place where she could get proper care? Somewhere safe. You know she's getting old. What if something happens while we're at work?" My breath caught in my throat. I waited for Daniel to protest, to defend me. But he didn't. He sighed, rubbed his forehead and muttered, "Maybe you're right." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. My own son, the boy I once carried on my hip, sang lullabies to, held when he cried, was agreeing to put me away. That night I couldn't eat. I sat in my room, staring at the family photos on my dresser. Pictures of Daniel's first birthday, his high school graduation, his wedding day. All the moments I thought bound us forever. But now those bonds were snapping one by one. And then, just as I was about to close my eyes, I heard it again. Jessica's voice, muffled but clear through the thin walls. She was on the phone. "Yes," she whispered. "It's working." He's starting to agree. Just give it time. Soon she'll be out of the way. My chest tightened. Out of the way. I pressed my ear to the wall, desperate to catch every word. But then I heard footsteps. Heavy, steady, coming down the hall, straight toward my door. The doorknob turned slowly. The doorknob rattled once, then stopped. My breath caught in my chest as I froze in place, clutching the blanket like it was a shield. My heart pounded so hard I thought the person outside would hear it. For a moment there was only silence. Then the door creaked open slowly. I expected Jessica's cold face to appear, but instead it was Daniel, my son. He poked his head in, whispering, "Mom? You're still awake." Relief rushed through me, though it was mixed with bitterness. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, Daniel. I couldn't sleep." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I once knew. Nervous, unsure, as though caught in the middle of two worlds. "Mom," he started, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Jessica's just worried about you. She thinks you'd be better off in a facility where you'd have people looking after you. It's not that we don't want you here." I swallowed hard. The lie was almost worse than the truth. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Do you really believe that? Do you think I'm a burden?" His eyes darted away. He rubbed the back of his neck, a habit he had since he was a teenager. I want you to be safe." That word again. The same word Jessica used earlier when she mentioned accidents. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that his wife was plotting something far more sinister, but the words died in my throat. I saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he seemed torn apart. He was caught, just like Charles had once been between me and Helen. And then it struck me like a slap across the face. This is exactly what I did to Helen. The endless tug of war. The manipulation. The guilt. Now it was my turn to stand on the losing side. Daniel sighed heavily. "Just think about it, Mom. We can visit you and you'll have nurses around the clock. It's not a bad thing." With that, he leaned down, kissed my forehead quickly, and left before I could say more. The door clicked shut, leaving me in the dark again. But my heart wasn't quiet. It roared with fear. Because I knew this wasn't about safety. Jessica wasn't worried about me falling down the stairs or forgetting to take my medicine. She wanted me gone. Permanently gone. The next morning, I dragged myself to the kitchen again. Jessica was there, humming softly as she buttered toast. The sun spilled through the window, making her look almost angelic, but I knew better. I sat down slowly, my body aching, and tried to pretend everything was normal. "Did you sleep well, Maggie?" she asked sweetly, her eyes sparkling with false kindness. I forced a smile. "I managed, thank you." She slid a plate toward me. "Eat. You need your strength." The way she said it made my stomach twist. I looked down at the food suspiciously, then back up at her. For a fleeting second, I imagined Helen sitting across from me years ago, her pale face watching as I ignored her presence. Back then I thought I was clever. Now I wondered if she ever suspected me the way I suspected Jessica. Jessica watched me carefully, waiting for me to take a bite. I picked up the toast, my fingers trembling, and brought it to my mouth. The butter glistened in the morning light. And just as my teeth were about to sink into it, I noticed something. The butter knife on the counter. It wasn't the one I usually used. This one had faint streaks of something dark smeared along the handle. Froze. Jessica's eyes narrowed slightly, her smile still plastered on her face. "Go on, Maggie. Eat." My pulse thundered in my ears. My hands shook harder, and I set the toast back down slowly. "I'm not very hungry this morning," I muttered. Her smile didn't fade, but her jaw tightened. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Suit yourself." The tension in the room was unbearable. I excused myself and shuffled back to my room, locking the door behind me. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was I imagining things? Was I letting guilt from my past twist every little action into something sinister? Or was Jessica really trying to poison me? The more I thought about it, the more I felt Helen's ghost hovering over me. She must have felt this too. The paranoia, the helplessness, the knowledge that someone in the house didn't want her around. And if I was right, if Jessica truly wanted me gone, then I wasn't just facing karma. I was fighting for my life. That night I decided to test her. I left my room quietly, tiptoeing down the hall. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I moved carefully, leaning on my cane, until I reached the kitchen. The plate of food Jessica had made me earlier was still there. Tut. I leaned closer, my wrinkled hands trembling, and sniffed. There was a faint odor beneath the butter. Something chemical, something wrong. My stomach turned. And just then I heard footsteps behind me. Low, steady, coming closer. I spun around, clutching the counter for balance. Jessica stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her lips curling into that thin smile again. "Couldn't sleep, Maggie," she whispered. Jessica's silhouette filled the kitchen doorway, the dim light from the refrigerator casting eerie shadows across her face. Her arms were folded tight against her chest, and her smile was faint, but her eyes, those sharp, cold eyes, pierced me like a blade. "Couldn't sleep, Maggie?" she asked again, her voice silky smooth, as if she already knew the answer. Froze, my breath hitching. I thought I'd get a glass of water," I stammered, quickly straightening myself, trying not to look like a thief caught red-handed. Her gaze flicked to the plate of food still sitting on the counter, untouched. Then back to me. "Water, huh?" she said, stepping closer, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. "Funny, because it looked like you were sniffing around the plate I made for you." The air in the kitchen grew heavier with each step she took. I clutched the counter, my knees weak, praying they wouldn't give out. "I wasn't," I whispered. I just thought I smelled something strange." Jessica tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Strange? Like what?" I shook my head quickly, my throat tightening. "It's nothing. Forget I said anything." Her smile widened ever so slightly. "Oh, Maggie, you're starting to sound paranoid. That happens sometimes, when people get old. They think everyone's out to get them." Her words sliced through me, because I knew she wasn't just mocking me. She was planting seeds. Planting them in the same way I once had, whispering into Charles's ears, convincing him his mother was meddling. Only now, it was Jessica whispering into Daniel's ears, convincing him that I was losing my mind. And maybe it was working. Jessica leaned close, so close that I could smell the faint sweetness of her perfume. "You don't have to worry though," she whispered. "Daniel and I will take care of everything. Soon you won't have to worry about a thing." Her hand brushed the plate on the counter, pushing it toward me. "Now, are you sure you don't want to eat? You need your strength." My stomach churned. I stepped back, shaking my head. "No, thank you." Her eyes narrowed, but she shrugged casually and turned, her heels echoing as she disappeared back into the hallway. The moment she was gone, my knees buckled. I gripped the counter, tears streaming down my face. That was the breaking point. The humiliation. The fear. The way she toyed with me like a cat with a trapped mouse. I felt stripped bare, powerless in my own son's house. I stumbled back to my room, locking the door behind me, and collapsed on the bed. My mind raced, spinning in circles between my guilt and my fear. Because deep down I knew, I was reaping what I had sown. When I had manipulated Charles, I hadn't thought about what Helen must have felt. But now I knew. I knew the sting of being dismissed, the ache of being unwanted, the terror of being at someone else's mercy. Helen's ghost seemed to hover over me, whispering, "Do you understand now? Do you feel what I felt?" I buried my face in my pillow and sobbed. For her. For me. For everything I had destroyed. The next day, Daniel came to me with papers in his hand. His face was pale, his lips tight as he held them out. "Mom," he said quietly, "these are some brochures Jessica found. They're for senior care facilities nearby. She thinks it's time we start considering options." My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Daniel," I whispered, tears flooding my eyes, "please, don't do this to me. I raised you. I gave you everything." He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the door, as if Jessica were standing there, waiting. "I know, Mom. But you're not the same anymore. You're paranoid. You're not eating. You need help we can't give you." Paranoid. There it was again. Jessica's words, echoing through his mouth. I wanted to scream that she was manipulating him, that she wanted me gone, that she was dangerous. But I knew, if I said it, he'd just nod sympathetically and think I was proving Jessica's point. I was trapped. That night, I sat on my bed staring at those brochures, the pictures of smiling nurses and clean rooms mocking me. I thought about Helen again, how I had told Charles she was too much, how I had convinced him she'd be happier elsewhere. And now, history was repeating itself in the cruelest way. But as I cried quietly, something inside me shifted. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of defiance. Because if Jessica thought I would go quietly, she was wrong. Later that evening, I heard voices in the living room. Jessica's voice was sharp, whispering urgently. I crept to the hallway, pressing my ear to the wall. "She's almost there," Jessica said. "He's already convinced. But we can't wait much longer. If we leave it too late, she might." Her voice trailed off as Daniel interrupted, his tone uncertain. "Jessica, I don't know. She's my mother. Maybe we should." "No," Jessica snapped, her voice firm. "Trust me, Daniel. This is for the best. You'll thank me later." My hands trembled as I pressed harder against the wall. My mind swirled with dread. What couldn't they wait for? And then, suddenly, the front door opened. I heard another voice. A man's voice. Low. Gruff. Jessica greeted him in a hushed tone. "Come in. She's in her room. We'll figure it out tonight." The sound of that man's voice sent chills down my spine. I couldn't make out every word, but I could hear the heaviness in it, the kind of voice that didn't belong in my son's living room at night. I pressed my ear harder against the wall, my palms damp with sweat. Jessica's voice lowered, but I caught fragments. "She won't resist much. Daniel is almost convinced. Paperwork, money." My knees weakened. Paperwork. Money. What did this stranger have to do with me? I shuffled quietly back toward my room, every board creaking beneath my steps, sounding like thunder in the silence of the house. My breath came fast and shallow, like prey fleeing from a predator. I shut the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. For the rest of the night, I sat in the dark, clutching the old rosary beads I hadn't touched in years. My lips moved in silent prayer, begging for protection, begging for strength. And as I prayed, I couldn't shake the echo of Helen's voice in my memory, her tears, her pain. This was my punishment, my karma. But maybe it didn't have to be the end. By morning the man was gone. I never heard him leave, but the house was silent again. I stepped into the kitchen with my cane, my legs shaking, and found Jessica making eggs. She smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Good morning, Maggie," she said cheerfully. "I made extra for you." I glanced at the plate suspiciously. "I'm not very hungry." Her smile faltered just for a moment. "Suit yourself." That was when I knew I had to be careful. More careful than ever. Later that afternoon, when Jessica left to run errands and Daniel was at work, I decided to search. I moved slowly, my knees aching, but determination pushed me on. I crept into the living room, then into the study where Jessica often sat with her laptop. The desk drawers were locked, but the wastebasket wasn't. Inside, crumpled and half hidden under grocery receipts, I found something, a glossy pamphlet, folded and creased. It wasn't for a nursing home. It was for a facility, a place far from here, not just a senior residence but a full-time memory care center. Expensive, restrictive, a place people didn't just leave whenever they wanted. And on the corner of the pamphlet was a sticky note, in Jessica's handwriting. "Call, confirm space for MHASAP. Agahaze." My blood turned to ice. I stuffed the paper back where I found it, careful not to leave a trace. My hands shook so badly I could hardly close the lid of the trash can. So that was her plan. To lock me away, convince Daniel I was losing my mind, and erase me from their lives. And maybe it was more than just erasing me. Maybe that man last night had something to do with it. For the rest of the day I stayed in my room, thinking. Fear clawed at my insides, but alongside it, another feeling began to rise. Something I hadn't felt in years. Defiance. If Jessica thought she could play this game and win, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I may have been 84, with weak knees and trembling hands, but I wasn't helpless. Not yet. That night, Daniel knocked softly on my door. "Mom, can I come in?" I opened it slowly. His face was troubled, tired. He sat down on the edge of my bed, sighing. "Jessica thinks. She thinks you're not well. She says you're seeing things, imagining things that aren't there." I stared at him, my heart aching. "And what do you think, Daniel? Do you believe her?" He rubbed his forehead, avoiding my eyes. "I don't know what to think. You've been acting strange lately. Not eating. Staying up all night. Because I'm afraid," I whispered. "Afraid of what she's planning. Afraid of what she's doing to you." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by the same weary resignation. "Just try to rest, Mom. We'll talk more later." He kissed my forehead and left, closing the door gently behind him. I sat there in silence, my fists clenched. If I stayed quiet, Jessica would win. She would twist my son's mind, just like I once twisted my husband's. But I couldn't let that happen. Not again. I needed a plan. And as if God himself had heard me, the next day, a lifeline appeared. The doorbell rang late in the morning, and Jessica was in the shower. I shuffled to the door, peeking through the glass. It was an old face. Familiar one. Mrs. Carter. My neighbor from 3 houses down. We hadn't spoken much in years, not since Charles passed, but she was kind. She had always been kind. I opened the door with trembling hands. "Maggie," she said, her eyes softening with concern. "I was just passing by and thought I'd check in. You look so thin. Are you all right?" I wanted to collapse into her arms and pour out everything, every fear, every suspicion. But before I could answer, Before I could even open my mouth, Jessica's voice rang out behind me, sharp as a knife. "Oh, Mrs. Carter. What a surprise." Maggie was just about to rest. She gets confused sometimes, you know. It's best not to overwhelm her. My blood boiled. Mrs. Carter frowned slightly, glancing between us. I tried to speak, to protest, but Jessica's hand landed firmly on my shoulder, her grip tightening in warning. "Why don't you head home now?" Jessica said sweetly. "We'll be fine." Mrs. Carter hesitated. Her eyes lingered on mine, searching, questioning. And in that moment I realized, if I didn't act now, I might lose my only chance at help. I opened my mouth, ready to scream the truth, to beg Mrs. Carter not to leave. But before I could, Jessica's nails dug deeper into my shoulder, and she leaned down, whispering in my ear so only I could hear. "Say one word, and you'll regret it." Jessica's nails pressed into my shoulder like talons, her whisper sinking deep into my bones. "Say one word, and you'll regret it." I froze, my throat tight, my voice caught somewhere between desperation and fear. Mrs. Carter was still standing at the door, her kind eyes locked on mine, waiting for me to speak. I wanted to scream, "Help me! Please don't leave me alone with her." But the grip on my shoulder reminded me that Jessica wasn't bluffing. She meant every word. I forced a weak smile, my lips trembling. "Thank you for stopping by, Mrs. Carter." "I'm fine." The lie tasted like poison on my tongue. Mrs. Carter studied me for a moment longer, her brows knitting together. Then she nodded slowly. "All right, Maggie. But if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call." She gave me one last look before walking away, her footsteps fading down the porch steps. The door shut with a heavy thud, and Jessica's hand slid off my shoulder. She leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear. "Smart choice," she whispered before striding past me as if nothing had happened. I stood there shaking, my hands gripping the doorframe for balance. Shame washed over me. I had let fear silence me, just like Helen must have felt when I silenced her. But shame wasn't the only thing inside me. There was also fire. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I whispered to myself, "No more." If Jessica wanted to believe I was weak, let her. That would be my shield, my armor. Because weakness, when played right, could hide strength. The very next morning I began my quiet plan. When Jessica left for errands, I shuffled to the small writing desk in my room. My hands shook, but I forced the pen across the paper. "Dear Mrs. Carter, I need your help. Please don't tell Jessica. She is trying to put me away. I am afraid for my life. Maggie." I folded the note and slipped it into the pocket of my cardigan. My plan was simple. The next time I saw Mrs. Carter, I would pass it to her discreetly. But for now I had to keep up the act. At breakfast, Jessica served me oatmeal. "Eat up, Maggie," she said sweetly, watching me closely. I forced myself to take a spoonful, swallowing the tasteless mush without flinching. She smiled satisfied. "Good girl." My skin crawled, but I smiled faintly back, pretending to be obedient, pretending to be fragile, pretending she was winning. Inside, though, I was planning. Later, when she wasn't looking, I slipped into the study again. This time I searched higher, the shelf above the desk. My fingers brushed against a folder, thick with papers. I pulled it down carefully. Inside I found forms, medical evaluations, power of attorney drafts, and at the top my name. My knees went weak. She wasn't just trying to convince Daniel to send me away. She was preparing the legal paperwork to control everything I owned. I stuffed the folder back quickly, my hands shaking, and hurried to my room before she noticed. That evening, Jessica appeared at my door, her eyes gleaming. "Daniel and I are going out tonight," she said smoothly. "We'll be home late. Try not to get into trouble while we're gone." I nodded, lowering my gaze. "Of course." But as soon as the front door closed behind them, I moved fast. Faster than I thought I still could. I pulled out the note I had written and tucked it into an envelope. Then I slipped out the back door, the cold night air biting at my skin. The street was quiet. Mrs. Carter's house glowed faintly at the end of the block. I shuffled down the sidewalk, my cane clicking on the pavement, my heart hammering in my chest. When I reached her porch, I slipped the envelope into her mailbox, whispering a silent prayer. Please, God, let her see it. Let her believe me. I turned to head back, relief washing over me. But as I stepped onto the sidewalk, headlights flared. Car slowed, pulling up beside me. The window rolled down. It was the same man from the other night. The gruff voice. He leaned out, his eyes scanning me. Shouldn't be out here all alone, ma'am, he said, his lips curling into a smirk. Accidents happen. My blood ran cold. The man's smirk sent a shiver down my spine. His face was half shadowed by the street lamp, but I could see enough. His square jaw, the scruffy beard, the kind of eyes that belonged to someone who didn't care much about rules. Accidents happen, he repeated, his voice low, almost casual. My grip tightened around my cane. I was just getting some fresh air, I muttered, trying to sound calm. He chuckled. At this hour, you could trip, fall. Nobody would even know until morning. The words twisted in my gut. This wasn't just a comment. It was a warning. I stepped back slowly, inching toward my house. Thank you for your concern, I whispered. The man leaned closer out the window. His gaze locked on me. Jessica worries about you, you know. She just wants what's best. Don't make it harder on her. Hearing Jessica's name on his lips confirmed everything I feared. This man wasn't just a stranger. He was part of her plan. I forced a nod and shuffled back toward my door as quickly as my aching legs would allow. My heart thundered in my chest, but I kept my face neutral, pretending not to be afraid. Only when I shut the door behind me and locked it did I allow myself to collapse against it, gasping for air. That night sleep never came. I sat by my window, staring at the street, clutching the rosary beads in my hands. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow made me tremble. But deep down, beneath the fear, I felt the faintest spark of victory. Because Jessica didn't know about the letter. The next morning, Jessica was in high spirits, humming as she prepared coffee. Daniel sat at the table, scrolling through his phone. You know, honey, Jessica said, pouring his cup. I think it's time we made a decision about your mom. The longer we wait, the worse it'll get. Daniel sighed. Jess, she's my mother. I need more time. Time? Jessica snapped, her voice sharp. What if she hurts herself? What if something happens while we're gone? Do you want that on your conscience? Her words struck him like arrows, and I saw the doubt in his eyes deepen. I swallowed hard. This was it. The moment Helen had lived through all those years ago. The tug of war. The slow pulling away. But this time I wouldn't be silent. That afternoon, while Jessica was upstairs, I caught Daniel in the hallway. I gripped his arm with all the strength I had. Daniel, I whispered urgently. Listen to me. She's lying to you. She wants me out of the way. Last night I saw her meeting with a man. He threatened me. He frowned, pulling his arm free gently. Mom, please. Don't start. Jessica loves you. She's trying to help. No. My voice cracked, tears filling my eyes. She's trying to get rid of me. Please, Daniel. I'm your mother. Look at me. For a moment he did. Really looked at me. His eyes softened, but then he shook his head. You're tired. You're imagining things. Please just rest. My heart shattered. He didn't believe me. Not yet. That evening I saw Jessica on the phone again. Her voice was sharp, urgent. Yes, she's almost ready. He'll sign the papers soon. Just keep everything in place. A week, maybe less, and it'll all be over. My blood turned cold. Over. Later, when I was alone in my room, I prayed Mrs. Carter had found my letter. She was my only hope now. 2 days passed with no sign. Jessica hovered constantly, never leaving me truly alone. Daniel grew colder, more distant. My world felt smaller with each passing hour. But then, on the third evening, there was a knock at the door. Jessica opened it, her face instantly bright with surprise. "Mrs. Carter. What a lovely surprise," she said, her voice sugary sweet. I froze in my room, my heart pounding. Had she read my letter? Was she here because she believed me? Through the crack of my door, I saw Mrs. Carter step inside, her eyes flicking around the room. "I just wanted to drop something off for Maggie," she said calmly. Jessica's smile never faltered. "How thoughtful of you. But she's resting now. I can take it for her." Mrs. Carter hesitated. Then her eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward me. In that instant, I knew she had read the letter. I stepped out, ignoring Jessica's glare, and forced a smile. "Oh, hello, Mrs. Carter. How kind of you to stop by." Jessica's eyes burned into me, warning me to stay silent. Mrs. Carter held up a small tin of cookies. "I baked these for you. Maybe we can sit together for a while. Just us ladies." Jessica's smile tightened. "She's very tired. Maybe another time." Mrs. Carter ignored her, stepping closer to me, pressing the tin into my hands. Her voice lowered slightly as she looked into my eyes. "I'd love to talk with you soon, Maggie. Alone." And in that moment I knew she was on my side. But Jessica wasn't about to let it happen. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, Jessica appeared in my doorway. Her face was calm, but her eyes blazed. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she whispered. "You think people are going to believe you over me? You're just an old woman, Maggie. Well, be forgetful. No one will believe a word you say." She leaned closer, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "And tomorrow, Daniel is signing the papers. By the end of the week, you'll be gone." My stomach dropped. "Tomorrow." She turned and left, leaving me in the dark, her words echoing in my head. Tomorrow. I had less than 24 hours to save myself. I didn't sleep a single second that night. Jessica's words replayed over and over in my mind. "Tomorrow, Daniel is signing the papers. By the end of the week, you'll be gone." The clock on my nightstand ticked louder than ever. Every second felt like it was counting down to the end of my life as I knew it. But weakness would not save me. Only action would. At dawn, I dressed carefully in my cardigan, slipping the rosary into my pocket for courage. My reflection in the mirror startled me. Hollow cheeks, tired eyes, hair thin and gray. I looked exactly the way Jessica wanted Daniel to see me. Fragile, fading. But inside, a different Maggie was awake. When Jessica left for groceries mid-morning, I made my move. I shuffled quickly down the street, each step sending pain through my knees, but I pushed forward until I reached Mrs. Carter's house. I knocked, my hand trembling. The door opened almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting. "Maggie," she whispered, pulling me inside. Her eyes brimmed with concern. "I got your letter." I didn't want to push too hard that day in front of her, but I know something's wrong. Tears filled my eyes. "She's going to put me away, Mrs. Carter. Facility. She has Daniel convinced I'm losing my mind. There was a man here, he threatened me. And tomorrow, he's signing papers." Mrs. Carter's face hardened with determination. "No, we're not letting that happen." She led me to the kitchen table and handed me a warm mug of tea. "Do you have any proof? Anything that shows what she's doing?" My mind spun. "There are papers. In the study. Forms with my name on them. I saw them. And last week, I overheard her on the phone. She said I wouldn't be here much longer." Mrs. Carter nodded firmly. "That's enough to start. I have a nephew, he's a lawyer. If you can get me copies of those papers, I can make sure Jessica doesn't get away with this." Hope flickered inside me like a fragile flame. For the first time in weeks, I felt less alone. I squeezed her hand. "Thank you. Thank you." But when I returned home that afternoon, Jessica was waiting by the door. "Where were you?" she asked coldly, her arms crossed. My heart raced. "I went for a walk. I needed air." Her eyes narrowed. "A walk?" "Yes." I forced my voice to stay steady. "I'm not a prisoner." She stared at me for a long moment, then smiled faintly. Not yet. I shuffled past her, hiding the tremor in my hands. That evening, as Jessica showered, I crept into the study. My hands shook as I pulled the folder from the shelf again. Inside were the forms. Admission application for residential memory care. My name scribbled at the top. Jessica's handwriting all over it. I stuffed a few pages under my cardigan, my heart thundering, and slipped back into my room. 4 hours I sat by the lamp, copying down every word onto a notepad I had hidden in my drawer. My eyesight blurred, but I didn't stop. This was my weapon. The next morning, the day of the signing, Jessica was dressed sharper than usual. Her hair was pinned neatly, her lips painted red. "Today's a big day," she said sweetly over breakfast. "By tonight, everything will be in order." Daniel sat at the table, pale and quiet. His hands fidgeted, his eyes distant. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him until he remembered who I was. But instead I stayed silent. Because silence was my weapon now. At noon, Jessica left with Daniel for the lawyer's office. The moment the door shut, I called Mrs. Carter from the landline in my room. "I have the papers," I whispered. "She's at the lawyer's now." "Stay calm," she said quickly. "I'm calling my nephew. We'll stop this. Just stay put." I hung up, relief washing over me. Maybe, just maybe, this nightmare would end. But my relief didn't last long. At dusk, headlights swept across the window. Car pulled into the driveway. The front door opened. Heavy footsteps echoed. But it wasn't Daniel's voice I heard. It was the man. The gruff one. "Where is she?" he asked, his voice low, menacing. Jessica's reply was sharp, urgent. "In her room. Tonight we're handling it. No more delays." The floorboards creaked under their footsteps as Jessica and the man moved closer to my room. I pressed myself against the wall, every muscle tight, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "Are you sure about this?" the man muttered. His voice was gruff, uneasy. Jessica hissed. "Yes. She's losing it. If we don't act, Daniel might change his mind. Tonight it has to be done." The words slammed into me like ice water. What did she mean by done? I shuffled backward, fumbling for my nightstand. My hands closed around my rosary, but what I really wanted was my notepad, the copies I had made of her papers. They were still hidden under my mattress. Proof. My only proof. The doorknob rattled. Gasp, stumbling back. My cane slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. "Maggie!" Jessica's voice was sickly sweet now. "Open the door. We need to talk." My voice shook. "Leave me alone." Silence. Then the man growled. "We don't have time for this." The door jolted violently as he shoved it. Once. The frame cracked. I clutched the notepad and the papers against my chest, praying Mrs. Carter's nephew was already moving, praying someone, anyone, would come. Then, just as the door splintered, headlights swept across the window again. Car pulled into the driveway. Jessica froze. "Who the hell is that?" The man cursed under his breath. Through the thin walls I heard voices outside. One was Mrs. Carter's. "Come steady." And another, a man's voice, firm, authoritative. "The lawyer nephew. Jessica Miller," the male voice said. "We need to speak with you. Now." My knees buckled with relief. Jessica cursed under her breath, the mask of sweetness cracking. "She called them," she hissed. "That old witch called them." The man growled. "What do you want me to do?" "Wait," Jessica snapped. "Not yet." I crept to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to see. Mrs. Carter stood by her car, arms folded, her eyes fixed on the door. Beside her, a tall man in a suit held a folder. He looked every bit the lawyer, sharp, confident, unshakable. Jessica stormed out of my room, her heels clicking furiously against the wood floor. The front door swung open. "Good evening," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with false charm. "Can I help you?" The lawyer didn't flinch. We've received concerns about your attempt to place Margaret Hayes into a memory care facility. I need to ask you some questions. Jessica laughed lightly, tossing her hair back. Concerns? Oh, you must be mistaken. Maggie is very ill. She's paranoid, confused. No, I whispered to myself, gripping the windowsill. Not this time. You won't win this time. I forced myself up, grabbed my cane and limped to the hallway. My chest ached, but I pressed on. When I reached the living room, Jessica's head whipped around. Her eyes widened as she saw me clutching the notepad against my chest. Liar, I croaked, my voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the night. She's lying. I have proof. The lawyer's eyes flicked to me. Mrs. Carter's lips tightened into a firm line of support. Jessica's mask cracked completely. Her face twisted with fury. Shut up, you crazy old woman. She lunged toward me. The man followed, his heavy boots thudding as he stepped forward. But before either of them reached me, the lawyer raised a hand. I suggest you stop right there. Because if you don't, this will become a criminal matter very quickly. Jessica froze, her chest heaving, her eyes darting between me, the lawyer and Mrs. Carter. For the first time I saw fear in her eyes. But then, the man at her side stepped closer. His jaw clenched, his voice low. You said this would be easy, he muttered to Jessica. You didn't say anything about lawyers. Jessica's hands trembled as she turned to him. Just take care of it. He glanced at me. His eyes were hard, cold. And then he reached into his jacket. Something glinted in the light. The room went deathly silent as the man's hand slipped into his jacket. A metallic glint caught the light. My breath stopped. Mrs. Carter gasped from the porch. The lawyer's voice cut through, sharp and commanding. Sir, take your hand out slowly. Right now. But the man ignored him. His eyes were locked on me. Cold. Calculating. I stumbled back, clutching my cane in one hand and the notepad in the other. My knees screamed, but I refused to fall. If this was the end, I would not collapse before Jessica's smirk. And then, suddenly, the front door burst open again. Mom! Daniel. He stood there in his work shirt, his eyes darting between me, Jessica, the man, and Mrs. Carter. Confusion and panic flashed across his face. What the hell is going on here? Jessica's smile snapped back into place instantly. Daniel, thank God you're home. Your mother, she's having another one of her episodes. She called strangers to the house, she's making wild accusations. Liar! I cried, my voice shaking but stronger than it had been in weeks. I lifted the notepad, my trembling hands clutching it like a weapon. I have proof, Daniel. She's been planning this. The facility. Papers. She wants me gone. Daniel blinked, his eyes moving from me to Jessica. Jess, what's she talking about? Jessica laughed nervously, waving her hand. Don't listen to her, honey. She's confused. She's not well. But the lawyer stepped forward, his voice steady. Mr. Hayes, I've seen the forms with your mother's name on them. Drafted without her consent. This woman, he pointed directly at Jessica, has been attempting to gain control of your mother's estate and place her into a facility under false pretenses. Daniel's face drained of color. What? Jessica stiffened, her eyes wide. That's not true. Daniel, he's lying. But Mrs. Carter spoke up firmly. I received a letter from your mother, written in her own hand. She begged for help. I believed her. And now you've seen the proof yourself. Silence. For a moment, the only sound was the heavy ticking of the clock on the mantel. Then Daniel turned to Jessica. His voice was low, deadly. Did you do this? Jessica's mask cracked completely. Her eyes filled with panic. Daniel, listen to me. She's old, she doesn't know what she's saying. Answer me, he roared, his voice shaking the walls. Jessica faltered. Her lips trembled. And in that instant, Daniel saw the truth. His fists clenched. He turned to the man, whose hand was still inside his jacket. Get out, Daniel growled. Now, before I call the police. The man hesitated, then slowly pulled his hand out, empty. No weapon, only a cruel bluff. He muttered something under his breath and stormed past Daniel, slamming the door behind him. Jessica's chest heaved as she spun toward Daniel. Honey, please. I was just trying to protect us. She's a burden, don't you see? She's dragging us down. The word sliced through me. Burden. That's exactly what I once called Helen. Tears blurred my vision. But Daniel's voice came again, steady, furious. No, Jessica. My mother is not a burden. You are. Jessica's face twisted with rage. She reached for his arm, but he pulled away. It's over, he said flatly. Pack your things and get out. Now. She froze, her mouth opening and closing like a fish, but no words came. Then, with a scream of frustration, she grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Silence fell. Daniel turned to me, his eyes wet with tears. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I let her get into my head just like... He stopped, his voice breaking. Just like Dad did with you and Grandma. The guilt I had carried for decades swelled inside me. I lowered myself into a chair, gripping his hand. Daniel, I wasn't innocent either. When I was young, I did the same thing to Helen. I turned your father against her. And now, karma brought it back to me. He knelt beside me, his face crumpling. Mom, you didn't deserve this. Not like this. I promise you, I'll never let anyone treat you that way again. Mrs. Carter laid a gentle hand on my shoulder. You're safe now, Maggie. You're not alone anymore. For the first time in what felt like forever, I believed it. The next week was a blur of police reports, legal papers, and quiet evenings where Daniel and I sat together, rebuilding the bond that Jessica had tried to break. The lawyer made sure the facility forms were voided, Jessica's manipulations documented, and my estate protected. But the true healing wasn't in the papers. It was in the forgiveness I finally allowed myself. Late one night, as I sat by the window with the rosary in my hands, I whispered a prayer to Helen. I'm sorry. Understand now. I know what I did to you. And I will spend the rest of my days honoring your memory, not repeating your pain. The moonlight fell across my face, soft and forgiving. And in that moment I felt lighter, stronger, free. Because I had survived Jessica's cruelty. I had faced my own sins. And though I was 84, with fragile bones and trembling hands, I had found a strength that no one could take away. Not Jessica. Not karma. Not even time. Sparkles, if this story touched your heart, remember this. Karma has a way of returning what we put out into the world. Sometimes it comes with pain, but sometimes it comes with the strength to finally heal. What did you take away from Maggie's journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories of survival, betrayal, and quiet justice. Because your story matters too, and it deserves to be heard. Sparkles.